Just stand near the wall. You're not in the official family shots. That's what my sister said to me on her wedding day while adjusting her dress and smiling for photographers. I wasn't late. I wasn't inappropriately dressed. I wasn't even trying to be seen. I was just standing there, the way I always did in this family, a little outside the frame. The seat they assigned me was gone. I double-checked the card. Table 6, seat 3. My name printed in gold. But when I got there, a girl I didn't recognize, blonde, glittery chewing gum, was already sitting there. Oh, she said. Someone told me this was open. Turns out she was the +1 of the cousin of the groom's fiancé. Not even family. I asked a server quietly if there were any extra seats. He shrugged. I stood near the exit with my clutch in both hands, trying not to be in the way. That's when I heard my father's voice, just behind me. Honestly, I don't even know why Maya's here. She's always so heavy. She ruins things. She doesn't fit. Then he added, to someone else. I couldn't tell who. I told Sarah not to invite her. She doesn't deserve to be part of this day. I froze. Not because I hadn't heard things like that before, but because this time he said it out loud. At a wedding. Around people. As if it were fact. As if it were okay. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for clarification. I didn't try to earn my place back. I just turned and walked toward the gift table. My envelope was easy to find, thick, white, with a small handwritten card and a folded check inside. $1,000. That money had taken me 6 months to save. But suddenly I knew it wouldn't be missed. I picked it up, slipped it into my clutch, and walked back down the aisle I hadn't been allowed to walk during the ceremony. People noticed. Heads turned. And I didn't stop. As I reached the front entrance, I looked over my shoulder just once and said, "Don't worry, I won't ruin anything else." And then I disappeared. But what happened next, in the days and weeks that followed, would unravel the image they worked so hard to protect. Because they forgot something important. They raised the quiet one. And quiet doesn't mean weak. I used to think there was something wrong with me. Because when your own family acts like your presence is an inconvenience, you start to believe it. That you're too quiet, too awkward, too smart or not smart enough, too emotional, too much, or in my case, just too invisible to matter. Growing up, my sister Sarah was the golden child. She sparkled. She danced. She lit up every room. At least, that's what everyone said. She was the one with the framed awards, the solo parts in the school musicals, the college acceptance letters everyone toasted. I wasn't jealous. I was just tired. Tired of being her shadow. Tired of my dad forgetting my birthday twice. Tired of my mom telling me to stop overthinking when I cried quietly in my room after being left out. I got good grades. Never broke rules. Helped around the house without being asked. Still, I was the one they forgot in introductions. Oh, and that's Maya, our other daughter. I put myself through community college while Sarah got a fully funded degree at a private university. She always had so much potential. I apparently was just practical. I started working right after graduation. Admin jobs, graphic work, temp gigs. Quiet money, saved carefully. Sarah got engaged to a man whose family threw parties that looked like magazine spreads. They planned the wedding in under 6 months. Everyone was involved. Except me. I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. Wasn't invited to dress fittings. Didn't get a "will you stand beside me" card in the mail. Just a text. "Hey, can you RSVP online? Hope you're free that weekend." That was my little sister. I told myself I was imagining it. That they were busy. That maybe they didn't realize. But then the wall comment happened. Then the seat. Then my own father, saying I didn't deserve to be there. And in that moment, something in me clicked. I realized I had spent years trying to earn space in a room that had no seat meant for me in the first place. So I took back the one thing that was mine, my choice. My voice. My envelope. My exit. And what they didn't know was, I wasn't just walking away. I had something they didn't expect. Leverage. And I was about to use it. They didn't notice at first. I left before the first dance, before the cake, before the speeches. Maybe they thought I was being dramatic. Maybe they assumed I'd slipped out quietly, sulking. They were half right, but they didn't realize I hadn't just walked out of the venue. I'd walked out of their story. The first message came 2 days later. From Sarah. Hey, saw you left early. Everything okay? I didn't respond. She didn't follow up. Next was my mother. I hope you didn't take anything your father said too seriously. You know how he gets when he's had a drink. He'd said it before the wine. I remembered clearly. His voice wasn't slurred. His mind wasn't foggy. Just his heart. Still, I didn't reply. The voicemail started by the end of the week. One from my aunt. We missed you at brunch. Are you still upset about the seat mix-up? Another from my dad, oddly short. You could have said something before storming off. That was embarrassing for your sister. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't ask how I felt. They just wondered why the photos didn't look right with me gone. Why there was no envelope in the gift box with my name on it. Then came the post-wedding awkwardness. Apparently, the photographer had already uploaded previews to a private gallery. Sarah shared them in the family WhatsApp group. I wasn't in a single shot. Not at the ceremony. Not in the family photos. Not even standing near the wall. My cousin texted me privately. Hey, did they ask you not to be in the pictures? I thought that was weird. I didn't confirm. Didn't deny. Just replied. I wasn't really part of the plan. He didn't respond. But 3 minutes later, Sarah removed me from the WhatsApp group. That should have hurt. But it didn't, because for the first time in years, the silence was mine. Not something done to me. Something I chose. A week later, my boss called me into her office. She'd been at the wedding. Not as a guest, but as a consultant. She handled venue contracts and event licensing on the side. It was her side business. She kept it low-key. I hadn't even known she'd be there. She closed the door and looked at me carefully. You okay? I nodded. You know I saw how they treated you, right? I looked up. That part one hadn't expected. They didn't even acknowledge you. It was like watching someone get written out of their own family. I swallowed. She reached into her drawer, pulled out a folder. I know something you don't. They're not just cruel. They're careless. And if you wanted to, you could do something with that. I opened the folder, and what I saw inside changed everything. Inside the folder were 2 documents, both signed, both legal, and both directly connected to the wedding. The first was a venue rental agreement, listing Sarah and her husband as co-signers, but also listing my employer, my boss, as the private property owner of the land the reception was held on. She didn't just coordinate the event. She owned the estate. And the second document, a private service agreement, confirming that all vendors, including the caterer, DJ, photographer, even parking attendants, had been paid under one umbrella invoice. Guess who was listed as the event sponsor on that invoice? Me. Or more specifically, the corporate gifting fund I manage at work, a fund I was given permission to dip into for special occasions, under the condition that it served brand visibility and public goodwill. My boss had arranged it as a favor. She offered to help cover the cost of the venue and essentials under my name, as long as I didn't use personal funds, and the family agreed to the promotional terms. They signed, and in doing so, they unknowingly made me the primary underwriter of the wedding. I paid for the venue, the DJ, the food, the valet, even the gift bags. That envelope I took off the table? It was the least valuable thing I pulled from that night. My boss smiled as I sat in silence, processing it. You're allowed to do nothing. Just walk away. Or, if you want to hold them accountable, I'll back you. Legally? I asked. Legally? Socially? Personally? Quietly? She wasn't pushing me. She was giving me back the pen. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just want closure. I wanted them to understand. To finally feel what it's like to be erased. To be excluded. To be an afterthought. That night, I reviewed every contract. The signed waiver stating that event sponsorship must be acknowledged in all published content. The invoice showing the venue was billed under my work account, with my signature as the initiator. The catering contract noting my dietary requests, the ones that were never served at the wedding. All of it lined up. They hadn't just humiliated me. They'd violated a business agreement. And for the first time in years, I held something they couldn't dismiss, belittle, or gaslight away. Proof. The next morning, I made a list. Pull company funds back? Notify vendors about the breach? Email Sarah and her husband about the terms they ignored? But none of it was impulsive. There were no threats, no yelling, no social media posts. Just a clean, polite email with all relevant documents attached, and one final line. Consider this notice that the silence you gave me has now been returned, with interest. They didn't respond right away. My email sat there, unopened by Sarah for 3 days, even though I could see the read receipt trigger from her husband's device. I wasn't expecting thanks. I was expecting shock. And that's exactly what I got. On the 4th day, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. Straight to voicemail. Maya, this is Dad. What is this crap about the venue? Your sister's telling me you're making demands like some lawyer. I don't know what stunt you're trying to pull, but this isn't funny. You're embarrassing yourself. Enough is enough. I smiled, because they still didn't get it. They thought this was personal. They didn't realize they'd breached a contract. The DJ already contacted me to ask why the sponsor was pulling their digital rights permission. The photographer emailed to say she couldn't legally post any of the wedding photos publicly without permission from the primary event underwriter. That's me. The social media album Sarah had spent hours curating, gone. Taken down. Because my name wasn't in it, but my money paid for it. I didn't reply to Dad. Instead, I forwarded a second notice, this time through my boss's lawyer. A formal warning about breach of agreement and public misrepresentation of corporate sponsorship. The tone was professional, unemotional. It didn't need to sound angry to land like a hammer. The silence that followed told me everything. 2 days later, I got an email from Sarah. No subject line. Just, why are you doing this? No apology. No ownership. No acknowledgement of the photos, the seat, the words Dad said. Just confusion, because for the first time in her life, I was the one holding something she wanted. I sat on it, didn't respond. I went for a walk, got a coffee, watched a little girl hug her mom outside a bookstore, and something clicked. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Scared that the person they thought was disposable wasn't. Scared that the version of me they kept at arm's length was suddenly at the center of something they needed. So I replied, not with anger, but with precision. You asked why I'm doing this. I'm not. You did. You signed the papers. You accepted the funding. You excluded me. I'm simply enforcing the boundaries you wrote around me. You said I didn't deserve to be part of your story, and now I've accepted that. I ended it with a single line. You can keep the day, just not the image. Within a week, the wedding posts were gone. The vendor tags? Removed. The photography rights? Revoked. And Sarah? She went quiet, because for the first time in our lives, she couldn't edit me out without losing everything around me. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was quiet. Emails that went unanswered. Photos that never got reposted. Vendors who pulled out of the post-wedding magazine feature Sarah had submitted to, because permissions weren't finalized. I didn't have to lift another finger. They did it to themselves. A week after my last email, my mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice brittle, like she was choosing every word through gritted teeth. Maya, I don't know what this is really about, but you've made your point. It's over now. Can we please just move on and act like a family again? Act. That was the word that stuck with me, because that's all we'd ever done. Act like we were close. Act like I was part of something. Act like I was never hurting. She didn't say sorry. Didn't say you were right. Just wanted the consequences to stop without acknowledging the cause. That's not an apology. That's a reset button. And I wasn't pressing it. From what I heard through my cousin, the only one who quietly checked in to say, I'm proud of you. Sarah had been in full damage control mode. She keeps saying Maya overreacted, he said, but she knows. Everyone knows. She humiliated you, and now she's trying to spin it. Apparently, one of the vendors had already left a review on a closed industry forum. Bride's family disrespected event sponsor. Contracts ignored. Poor communication. Would not work with again. They thought I was disposable. But in the end, I was the one person they couldn't erase without leaving a hole in the foundation. They'd planned a post-wedding brunch with local media friends. Small influencer Sarah had been courting for months, hoping for a lifestyle write-up, a mini feature, hashtags, brand mentions. But when the press found out the vendor agreements were under dispute, they backed out. No story, no photos, no buzz, just a quietly awkward brunch, a lot of uneaten food, and a family sitting in silence wondering how the girl they told to stand against the wall managed to pull the power cord on their fantasy. I didn't tell anyone what happened, didn't make a social post, didn't gloat, didn't even mention it to friends unless they asked, because this wasn't revenge. This was restoration of my worth, of my boundaries, of the truth that I had value, whether or not they ever saw it. They thought silence was weakness, but silence in the right hands is devastating. I didn't plan on changing my life after the wedding, but when you finally stop shrinking, it's hard to go back. The silence I walked into became space, and space became something I'd never had before. Freedom. No more tiptoeing around phone calls. No more awkward dinners, pretending we were something we weren't. No more invisible wounds from people who smiled with their mouths and cut with their silence. I invested the wedding gift money, not just the envelope I took back, the full amount that had been allocated through my employer's fund, now redirected with permission. I started a project I'd shelved for years, a community design program for young women from underrepresented backgrounds. Girls like me, the ones people overlook until they don't. We met weekly, taught each other skills, built portfolios, shared stories, created things that mattered. The program took off faster than I expected. By spring, we had sponsorship inquiries. By summer, I had stepped out of my old job and into a leadership role I never thought I'd earn on my own terms. But I did, because I wasn't waiting to be included anymore. I was building the table. My apartment changed too. I started replacing things, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Lamps, blankets, wall art. I filled the space with softness, with color, with laughter from new friends who didn't know me as Sarah's sister, just Maya. For the first time, I had people over who saw me, not for who I was missing from my life, but for who I was becoming in it. One afternoon, months after the wedding, I passed by a coffee shop where Sarah's Instagram had once tagged as sister date. A post I was never in. Just 2 cappuccinos and a caption that read, "She gets me." That moment used to sting. Now, I walked past without looking inside, because I didn't need their story anymore. I had my own. People think rising means winning, but for me, it meant not needing the scoreboard at all. It meant waking up and not checking if I was being talked about, not wondering if I'd be invited, not asking if I was enough. I am. And the version of me that once stood by the wall, eyes down, waiting for someone to say, "Come join us." She doesn't live here anymore. She's been replaced by a woman who brings her own chair or walks away if none were built for her. I still have the dress I wore to the wedding. It hangs in the back of my closet, clean, unwrinkled, untouched since that day. Not because I can't let go, because I remember everything it taught me. How it felt to stand in a room where no one saved me a seat. How it felt to hear my own father say I didn't deserve to be there. How it felt to leave without raising my voice, without making a scene, without asking anyone to follow. That dress isn't a scar. It's a marker. A quiet line between the version of me who waited to be invited and the woman who finally left the building. Sometimes people ask if I ever reconnected with my family. No, not really. They never apologized, never said we were wrong, never asked what that day felt like for me. They didn't want understanding. They wanted restoration without reflection. And I wasn't going to offer it, because forgiveness isn't about handing back access. It's about choosing yourself in full, even if that means walking forward alone. I've created more life in the months since than I ever did in the years I spent shrinking. I started speaking at small conferences, published a piece about emotional invisibility that went unexpectedly viral, helped one of my design students land a full scholarship. Her thank you card is taped to my fridge. She wrote, "Thank you for not asking me to be small." And when I read that, I knew I'd broken the cycle, because they tried to convince me that standing by the wall was my place. but I was never meant to be in the background. I was just raised by people who feared what would happen if I stepped into the light. The last time I heard from Sarah was a text. 6 words. You made your point. We're done. She meant it as punishment. I read it as freedom, because what they never realized is I wasn't trying to prove a point. I was proving to myself that I didn't need theirs. Their seat, their spotlight, their approval. I didn't need a family who only remembered I existed when they needed something photo-worthy. I needed peace. And now, I have it. Sometimes I still think about the wedding. The music, the lights, the laughter. I wonder if they noticed that, even with all the guests, all the dancing, all the celebration, something felt missing. Not because I was loud, not because I was dramatic, but because when the quiet one leaves and takes her presence, her effort, her energy, her kindness, it echoes louder than any toast. And now, I don't need to be in the picture to know I made the frame possible. I made it all possible. They just looked away too long to notice. The steak was half cut on my plate, untouched, bleeding just a little. The candles flickered soft orange over my wine glass. Across from me, my sister adjusted her white lace engagement dress for the 5th time, giggling into her fiancé's shoulder like we were filming a rom-com. But my hands were trembling. I smiled anyway, cleared my throat, and slid the little black envelope across the table. Just something to help you two get started. My mom gasped. My dad finally looked up from his phone. Even my brother paused mid-bite. Inside that envelope was a receipt for a $2,000 venue deposit, a fully paid professional photographer, and an $8,000 cashier's check. My sister blinked, then blinked again. "Oh my God," she whispered. For a moment I saw it, softness in her face. Gratitude, almost awe. Then her fiancé leaned over, peeked inside the envelope and chuckled. He didn't whisper. He wanted everyone to hear. "Wow," he said, smiling at me like I was an overeager stranger. "She's really trying to matter again." My sister laughed. Not a fake, nervous laugh. A real one, sharp and shared, like an inside joke I didn't get. My mom giggled behind her hand. And that was when I felt it. Something split down the center of me. Clean. Quiet. I reached for the envelope, slid it back across the table, and tucked it into my purse. They were still laughing when I stood up. "Let me try less," I said, calm as water. And I walked out. I didn't look back. 10 minutes later, the venue manager, whose number was still listed under my name, called my sister. He informed her that the booking was canceled. The deposit was non-refundable. The photographer texted her fiancé, "Per Aaron's request, your date is off my books." The bank transfer for rent bounced right back into my account. I had unlinked their address that morning. By the time they left the restaurant, they had no venue, no photographer, and no money. Just a growing sense of dread and 3 wine glasses left untouched. They thought they'd shamed me into silence. They thought they could humiliate me at their celebration, and I'd still sit there smiling, paying, performing. But they forgot something. I wasn't trying to matter. I was trying to be kind. And when kindness is met with cruelty, well, they wanted a performance. Instead, they got a warning. I was 11 when my mom first called me the reliable one. It was over something small, making dinner while she was late from work, watching my little sister so she could rest. But I remember the way she said it, like it was a compliment, like being responsible was some kind of crown. I wore it proudly for years. Straight A's, babysitting jobs, no parties, no dating until college. Always the one who picked up the slack when someone dropped the ball, which in my house was often. My sister Natalie, she dropped them daily. Speeding tickets? I paid 3. Credit card debt? I covered it twice. Once without even telling her I did. Rent shortfalls? Constant. She'd cry, promise to get her life together, and my parents would say things like, "She's still figuring it out?" Not everyone matures early like you, Aaron. That was the pattern. I was the plan B, the backup parent, the fixer. Natalie, on the other hand, she was the sunshine, the princess, the one they joked would marry rich and solve everything. Except she never married rich. She just dated guys who looked expensive, posted filtered photos, and borrowed from me when rent was due. There was 1 week. I just started a new job, hadn't even got my first paycheck yet, when she called sobbing because her power was about to be shut off. I drove an hour in a snowstorm to hand her cash. No thank you. No hug. Just, next time, please bring groceries too. I have nothing here. And I did. Next time and the next time and the next. It wasn't just her. My parents leaned into it too. They asked me to co-sign loans I didn't benefit from. Asked if they could temporarily list my house as a collateral asset when they refinanced their second mortgage. I said yes, because that's what the reliable one does. They don't ask why the house needs refinancing. They just show up, sign, pay, smile. I kept telling myself it was love, that they loved me, that they must, right? Because who lets someone give this much and doesn't love them back? Who lets their daughter sink herself in quiet debt just to hold the family together? But then came the engagement dinner, and the card, and the laughter. I watched Natalie laugh at me at the biggest, most generous gift I'd ever given, like I was a joke at my own table. I didn't matter. Not really. Not to her. Not to any of them. The gift wasn't proof of love. It was proof of my role. Because in their story, I wasn't a sister. I was just a service. I started noticing the way he looked at me. Not at me, really, through me. Like I was a number. A resource. A means to a very comfortable end. Tyler, my sister's fiancé, was charming, sure. Good teeth, expensive watch, smile like a salesman. And he knew it. When I first met him, he said, "So you're the sister/sponsor?" I laughed awkwardly. Thought it was just a weird joke. But then it kept happening. Little digs, always with a smile. "You must really love working, huh?" "Wow, another check? You trying to outshine the bride. You're like a third parent to Natalie, maybe even the richer one." He said these things with a chuckle, a clink of his whiskey glass, like we were friends roasting each other at a party. But it wasn't friendly. It was framing. He knew what he was doing. And my sister? She didn't stop him. She laughed along, egged it on. That's when I realized Tyler wasn't some anomaly. He was a mirror, a perfect reflection of my family's values. Take, joke, belittle, repeat. One night, I came over to drop off an RSVP list Natalie had forgotten at my place. Their apartment was dark, but the front door was cracked. I knocked, then stepped inside. Tyler was on the phone, pacing in the kitchen. "No, man, I'm not worried. She's desperate to belong. Let her pay. She'll keep doing it. It makes her feel needed." Silence. Then he laughed. A cold, flat sound. I slipped out before he saw me. I sat in my car for almost an hour, gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding like a threat. Desperate to belong. Let her pay. I thought about every time Natalie had come to me with a teary voice and a "please, just this one time." Every time Tyler had smirked when I offered to help. Every time my parents had called me amazing right after they asked for something. I wasn't family. I was a fund. This engagement wasn't about love. It was about the optics, the venue, the curated Instagram life. I wasn't the sister giving a gift. I was the ATM keeping the illusion alive. That night, I pulled up my bank statements, looked at every dollar I'd transferred, every time I'd bailed them out, covered rent, bought groceries, paid off bills that weren't mine. It wasn't just the money. It was the expectation. And the worst part? They didn't even try to hide it anymore. Because people don't hide things from objects. They just use them. And I was done being used. Because Tyler didn't love my sister. Not really. He didn't want her. He wanted what I could give her. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out of that restaurant. Instead, I smiled. And in that smile was every quiet, calculated thing I was about to do. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, made myself coffee, and started unraveling the illusion, piece by piece. First, the venue. I called them directly, not the coordinator. Set an in-person meeting. When I arrived, I brought all the receipts, ID, bank records. Proof the deposit was from my account, under my name with my signature on every line. The manager, a woman named Carla, looked at me and said, "You still want the date reserved?" I paused, then smiled. "Yes." But no one else is authorized to change or access anything, not even the couple. Carla nodded. Understood. Step 2, the photographer. He was a friend of a friend, a talented guy I'd paid in full to secure his time. I called him, explained the situation vaguely, and said I might cancel. He didn't ask questions, just said, "You gave me a good rate. I'll hold off booking anyone else. But your contract is your call." Then came the big one, the money. I went to the bank, sat down with an advisor, told them the $8,000 was technically a gift, but I wanted legal protection in case things turned complicated. They helped me file a notarized statement. Gift pending on conditions not yet fulfilled. No shared counts. No co-signed anything. In short, nothing traceable. Nothing owed. I was done being their safety net. Done being their plan B. From the outside, though, you'd think I was planning the royal wedding. I kept replying to Natalie's texts. Kept saying things like, "So excited," and "You'll be the most beautiful bride." She ate it up. Tyler sent me a meme once, a joke about rich aunts funding chaos. I didn't even respond, because the party they were planning, it wasn't real. The venue, mine to cancel. The photographer, already fading. The $8,000, sitting in a different account now, untouched, protected, but I let them build it anyway. The Instagram posts, the floral Pinterest boards, the endless group chats about signature cocktails and bridesmaid shades. I watched them get drunk on fantasy, watched them climb higher and higher into their storybook. Because here's the thing about revenge. You don't need to push people off a cliff. Sometimes you just have to step back and let them fall. The restaurant was upscale, dim lights, ivory tablecloths, gold-trimmed menus. One of those places where the server refills your water after every sip. I wore navy. Simple, classic, forgettable. Because tonight wasn't about me. At least, not to them. It was Natalie and Tyler's engagement dinner. The soft launch of their new identity as a power couple. My parents were glowing. My brother flew in just to play favorite. The table was buzzing with future plans. The venue, the bridal shower, the honeymoon in Cabo. All ideas they assumed I'd be funding. I smiled through all of it, played my part, the generous sister, the reliable one, and when dessert was cleared, I stood up and said, "I have something special for you both." I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, and placed it gently in front of them. The gold trim glinted under the chandelier. Everyone leaned in. Inside was the full breakdown. Paid in full venue deposit, a signed contract from a top-tier photographer, and an enclosed check for $8,000 made out to Natalie. Gasps. Even Tyler looked impressed. My mother clutched her chest. For a moment, a brief, flickering moment, I saw something close to gratitude in Natalie's eyes. And then Tyler leaned in, glanced at the card, and said it. Wow, she's really trying to matter again. He said it like a joke, but he said it loud enough for the whole table to hear. My sister laughed. Not politely, not nervously. She laughed like it was hilarious. My father looked down at his drink. My mother said nothing. I picked up the envelope, slid it back into my bag, looked around at the people I had supported, paid for, protected. Then I said calmly, "Let me try less." And I walked out. No shouting, no tears, no last words. I walked into the quiet evening air and let the door shut behind me like a gavel. 10 minutes later, I was in my car when my phone buzzed. Natalie, 7 missed calls. Mom, 2 missed calls. Tyler, 1 text. What the hell did you do? And then a voicemail from Carla at the venue. Hi, just confirming the cancellation as requested earlier this week. The deposit has been released. We've voided the event date. Let us know if you need anything else. Then the texts came like fireworks. Natalie, you canceled the venue? Mom, call me now. Tyler, you messed up everything. Is this some kind of joke? Natalie, where's the photographer? They're not answering. Mom, the rent didn't go through this month. Did you change something? Yes. Yes, I did. The deposit? Refunded. The photographer? Never confirmed. The $8,000? Back in my name. The rent? No longer my responsibility. They weren't just embarrassed. They were exposed. Because this whole time, they thought I was trying to earn love. Desperate for attention. Begging for approval. They were wrong. I wasn't desperate. I was done. And when I left that restaurant, I didn't raise my voice. I raised the stakes. The backlash came fast. Angry calls. Bitter voicemails. A family group chat that lit up like a forest fire. How could you embarrass her like this? You humiliated your sister in front of everyone. After everything she's done for you? Everything she's done for me? Right. But I stayed silent. I didn't reply, didn't explain, because the collapse had already started. First, the photographer posted an open date announcement, same day as the wedding. Sudden change of plans, he wrote. Now booking. Mutuals tagged Natalie. Comments section exploded. Then came the venue update. A luxury wellness brand had snagged the date. Full buyout. Non-refundable. Gone. Tyler called me. I let it go to voicemail. You think this is funny? You made your sister look like a beggar in front of her friends. We've been scrambling all day. You better fix this. I didn't fix it. Instead, I blocked his number. That night, Natalie's Instagram went private. She deleted half the wedding posts. Change of plans, her caption said, followed by a heart emoji that didn't fool anyone. But the worst was still coming. The landlord called them, said the rent check bounced. When Natalie told them I'd always handled it, he said, well, not anymore, she doesn't. They were 2 months behind and hadn't even known. Turns out when you build your whole life on someone else's effort and they stop trying, everything starts to fall apart. Tyler's friends started whispering. One of them leaked a screenshot, him bragging in a group chat, calling me the financial buffer. He became the punchline. A man who couldn't afford a wedding without his fiancée's older sister. Sponsors backed out. Venue gone. Vendors gone. Wedding canceled. And so was the engagement. I didn't hear about it from them. I heard it from a mutual friend who worked in event planning. Tyler walked out, she whispered. Said Natalie wasn't ready for real life. That everything she had was borrowed. Natalie called me 3 days later. Voicemail. You ruined everything. I was happy. He was the one. And you made him think I was pathetic. Long pause. I needed you. And you vanished. I stared at the screen. No reply. Because she wasn't wrong. She did need me. But only to clean up. Only to fund, fix, or forgive. I gave them everything once. My money. My time. My silence. This time I gave them nothing. And it broke them. For the first time in my life, the silence felt like mine. No guilt. No obligation. No waiting for someone to need me before I felt like I had a place. The phone stopped ringing after a while. The messages turned from rage to guilt to silence. I didn't block them all, I just muted the noise. The absence was peaceful. I moved to a smaller apartment. Cheaper. Cozier. Mine. With the money I would have spent on a wedding I wasn't invited to, I started something small, a mentorship program for girls from homes like mine. We met in borrowed spaces at first. Coffee shops. Community rooms. Libraries. They didn't need thousands of dollars. They needed someone who'd been there and made it out. Every time one of them said, I thought I was the only one, I remembered why I walked away. Why I had to. In between work and the mentorship, I started writing. Anonymously at first. A blog. Not Their Wallet, that was the name. It wasn't just about me. It was about the girls who were raised to be providers, therapists, housekeepers, anything but daughters. It was about the quiet grief of realizing your family only loved you for what you could give. It took off slowly, then quickly. People emailed. DMs poured in. Women from everywhere. This is my story. How did you know? You're putting into words what I've never been able to say. I kept writing. The blog gave me a voice. But more than that, it gave me proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't bitter. I was just finally free. Free to say no. Free to not explain myself. Free to stop performing for applause I never got. I stopped overgiving. I set boundaries. If someone asked too much of me, I said, that's not something I can do right now. And I didn't follow it with an apology. I stopped trying to be the good one Stopped showing up to events I wasn't invited to. Stopped wondering if they missed me. Because I finally understood they didn't miss me. They missed what I did for them. And I was done mistaking that for love. Some nights, I reread the messages Natalie sent after everything fell apart. The ones where she said, "You left me when I needed you." But I didn't. I left when I needed me. I think that's the part that scared them most. Not that I said goodbye, but that I didn't look back. Because once you realize your worth isn't in what you offer, but in what you endured, there's no going back to smallness. No going back to silence. No going back to rooms where you have to bleed to be seen. And that's what this whole journey was. Not revenge for the sake of revenge, but release. A quiet, undeniable declaration. I matter to me, and I always will. A year passed like an exhale I didn't know I'd been holding. One quiet morning, a small white envelope landed in my mailbox, handwritten, gold-inked, with my full name spelled perfectly. It wasn't from Natalie. It was from a girl named Jada, one of the first I mentored. Inside was a wedding invitation. Simple, thoughtful, no expectation, just love. "I wanted you there," she'd scribbled at the bottom. "You taught me I didn't have to shrink to be chosen." I sat with that for a long time. Not the invitation itself, but the fact of it being remembered included not for what I could give, but for who I was. The week of Jada's wedding, I found myself near my old life, near the venue that once held my sister's dreams and my quiet destruction. I stopped outside, just for a moment. It was booked, lively, buzzing with music and laughter and something real. Not ours. Someone else's celebration. Someone else's joy. A part of me waited for the ache, but it didn't come. Across town, I heard Natalie had moved back in with our parents. The wedding never happened. Tyler moved cities. Their Instagram profiles were curated silence, aesthetic quotes, and blurry coffee cups that didn't hide the unraveling. They never reached out again. Not really. There were no apologies, no reckoning, no healing talks over coffee. And that's okay. Closure didn't come from them. It came from walking past the place where I'd once handed over my heart, gift-wrapped and ignored, and realizing I wasn't mourning it anymore. That venue? It wasn't mine to grieve, because I was never supposed to be standing on that stage. I was just the scaffolding, the backstage crew, the person who paid for the lights and got told to dim them. They built their stage on my generosity, but I was never part of their play. Now, I write my own. Every post I share, every girl I mentor, every dollar I spend on building something that gives back, not drains. I matter in rooms where I'm not invisible. I'm seen by people who don't smirk when I show love, who don't treat kindness like currency, who don't make me audition for belonging. And no, I don't sit at that table anymore. The one where love was conditional, where I had to keep serving just to be allowed to stay. I left the table. They stayed hungry.